Somebody was hammering on the west door of Elmhurst at midnight, and when Everard opened it himself, in his shirt-sleeves with his finger still in his book, the young woman on the step took one look at him and said, "You did not send for me." "I did not send for anybody." "No," she was white to the lips. "No, you are in your shirt-sleeves and the house is dark and there is no servant awake in it. May I ask your grace one thing before I turn round? Have you ever in your life written to a Mr. Holly Stroud of Bracken End?" "I have never heard the name." "He is my father," said the young woman, and put her hand flat on the doorpost as though the ground had moved. Everard, 7th Duke of Elmhurst, stood in his own doorway at midnight and did what he had learnt to do in 11 years of magistrate's work, which was to stop thinking about himself entirely and look at what was in front of him. A woman of perhaps 24, a dark cloak good once over a light-colored gown that was far too fine for a night walk, a dinner gown, in fact, with the sleeves cut low. No bonnet, no maid, thin shoes wet through, and in her gloved hand a folded paper with a broken seal. "May I see that?" he said. She gave it to him. He read it by the light of his own candle held up in the door. "Madam, you will come to Elmhurst at midnight tonight, alone and unattended, and you will come to the west door, which will be unlocked. Say nothing to anybody. I need not tell you what your father's affairs depend upon. E. It is not my hand," Everard said. "It is not my paper, it is not my seal, and I do not sign myself with a single letter like a man in a novel." He turned it over. What was on the seal? "A stag's head. My father's fob has a stag's head on it. I have known it since I was 6 years old." Her voice was steady in the way a bridge is steady with too much weight on it. "I did not look at the seal until I was at the end of your avenue, because I was crying at the beginning of it. And then I looked, and I thought, that is my father's fob, and I had my hand up to knock, and I could not put it down again. And then you opened the door, and the whole house was black behind you." And she stopped. "Your Grace, there are 2 men in the lane by your lodge gate." Everard set the candle down on the hall table. "Describe them." "One is Mr. Peck, who is an attorney's clerk at Marbury and who does small business for my father. The other is Mrs. Hobley from the village, who my father cannot bear and would not have in the house, and who has the loudest voice in the parish. They are standing where the lamp is. They were there when I came up, and they made no attempt to hide, and Mrs. Hobley said good evening to me by name." She laughed once, terribly. "I was to be seen. That was the whole of it. I was to be seen going in at your west door at midnight in a dinner gown, alone. And then your Grace would have to pay a great deal or marry me, and either way my father's affairs would be." She did not finish. She sat down instead, on the bottom step of his own staircase, without being asked, and put her face in her hands. And Everard, who had been feared in 3 counties for 14 years, and had never once been sorry about it until that moment, discovered that he had no idea what to do with his hands. He rang the bell instead. He rang it until the house woke up. What his household found, coming down in various states of undress, was the Duke of Elmhurst standing in the hall with his coat on now, and giving orders in the flat, rapid voice he used at the assizes. Mrs. Larkin, the housekeeper, to stay in the hall and not leave it. A lamp lit in the lodge parlor, fires in the lodge, and Mrs. Larkin's own bed made up there. The second groom on a horse to the vicarage to bring Dr. Amory and Mrs. Amory this minute, with the Duke's compliments, and his word that it was a matter of a young lady's reputation. The head groom and 2 men down to the lane by the lodge gate to invite Mr. Peck and Mrs. Hobley into the lodge kitchen and give them beer, and on no account permit them to leave. And the butler to fetch pen, ink, and 3 sheets of paper. "Your Grace," said Mrs. Larkin, "the young lady's shoes." "Yes, thank you, do that first." Then he crouched down in front of the staircase, 2 steps below the young woman sitting on it, which put his face lower than hers. "Madam, I do not know your name." "Verity Stroud." "Miss Stroud, you have not crossed my threshold, and you are not going to. You are sitting on the bottom step of my stair with my housekeeper, 11 feet away, and the door standing open behind you, and it is going to stay open until the vicar and his wife arrive. And then you will go to my lodge and sleep in my housekeeper's bed with my housekeeper in the room and the vicar's wife in the next one. In the morning we shall have a magistrate here, and it will not be me. It will be Sir Hugh Cardell from Netherby, because I am a magistrate myself, and I will not sit on my own business." He held her eyes. "And nobody in England is going to be able to say one word about you, because there is going to be too much paper. Do you follow me?" "You are going to write it down," Verity said. "All of it tonight. Every particular, with the hour against it, signed by every person in this house, and by your Mr. Peck and Mrs. Hobley if they can be got to sign, and if they cannot, then signed by the men who found them standing in a lane at midnight. Tomorrow it goes to Sir Hugh, and a fair copy to my attorney, and another to Dr. Amory to keep in the parish chest." Everard stood up. "I have spent 11 years watching men do this to women in my own courtroom, Miss Stroud, and I have watched it fail every time for the same reason, which is that the woman had nothing in writing and the man had a friend. You are going to have 40 pages and a vicar." Verity Stroud looked up at him with her eyes swimming, and then said something he did not expect at all. "You are very angry," she said. "You have not once raised your voice and you are shaking with it. Why?" Everard considered lying to her. It would have been easy and it would have been civil. "Because at the end of my avenue," he said, "there were 2 people standing under a lamp waiting to watch a young woman knock at a door, and neither of them stopped you. And because whoever wrote that letter counted on my character to make the story stick. You did not know me from the Emperor of China, and you came anyway, at midnight, in a gown that cannot keep out the cold, because you were told your father's affairs depended on it, and because everybody in this county knows perfectly well what the Duke of Elmhurst is said to be like. I have not troubled to correct any of it in 14 years. I have found it convenient. Men pay their rents and their gaming debts to a man they are afraid of." He picked up his candle. "And tonight my convenient reputation was the lever somebody used to try to sell his own daughter. So yes, Miss Stroud, I am angry, and a good deal of it is at myself, and you are the last person in this house who ought to be receiving an apology tonight, and you are going to receive one anyway." Dr. and Mrs. Amory came at 20 minutes to 1, the vicar in a coat over his nightshirt and his wife entirely dressed and already furious. Mrs. Amory took one look at the girl on the stair and said, "Bracken End, you are Stroud's daughter. Child, put this round you," and had her in the lodge parlor with tea in 11 minutes. The paper took until 4 in the morning. Everard wrote it himself, sitting at the lodge kitchen table, because he wrote faster than his butler. He took the account of every person present, what hour they were woken, what they saw, where the young lady sat, that the west door stood open throughout, that Mrs. Larkin was never out of the hall, that Mrs. Amory of the vicarage was in the lodge from 12:40 and did not leave. He took Mr. Peck's account, which Mr. Peck gave with the enthusiasm of a small man who has understood in one instant which side of a thing he wishes to be on, and which included the fact that Mr. Holly Stroud had paid him £1 and a promise, and had told him to be under the lamp at midnight, and to remember what he saw, and to be prepared to say so at Marbury. Mrs. Hobley's account was more grudging and rather longer and required 3 cups of tea, and confirmed the same. They all signed. Peck signed twice, having been asked. Sir Hugh Cardell arrived from Netherby at 9, read the whole of it, said one word not fit for a lady's hearing, and sent a constable to Bracken End. Mr. Holly Stroud came to Elmhurst at 11 o'clock in his own gig, in a good coat, with the air of a man arriving to be outraged, and got as far as, "Your Grace, I am given to understand that my daughter," before he saw who was sitting in the room. The vicar, the vicar's wife, Sir Hugh Cardell with 40 pages in front of him, Mrs. Larkin, Mr. Peck looking at the carpet, and his daughter in a borrowed morning gown, standing by the window with her hands folded. Everard let the silence run for a while, because he had learnt at the assizes exactly what a silence is worth. "Sir Hugh," he said at last, "will you tell Mr. Stroud what he is looking at?" Sir Hugh told him. He told him about the forged note, which was conspiracy, about Peck's pound and his promise, which was 2 witnesses, about the sworn statements of 9 persons, and about what a grand jury at the next quarter sessions would very probably do with a man who had attempted to extort money from a peer by procuring the ruin of his own daughter. Holly Stroud sat down without being asked and began, wretchedly, to explain about his affairs. "No," said Verity from the window. Everard turned. So did everybody. "You will not explain your affairs," she said. "Not in this room. I have kept your books since I was 19, Papa, and there is nothing in them that anybody here has not already guessed, and if you say one word about being driven to it, I shall never be able to look at you again as long as I live, and I should like to be able to one day when I am old." Her voice cracked and she went on. "Your Grace, Sir Hugh, may I say what I want?" "You may," said Sir Hugh. "I do not want him tried." She said it steadily. "Not out of tenderness, because a trial at Marbury would put my name in every newspaper between here and Bristol, and the newspapers would not print the 40 pages. They would print the gown and the midnight and the west door, and I should carry it for 30 years, and he would carry it for 2. He may go to my mother's brother in Cork, who has offered 100 times and been laughed at. Let him have the passage money and £40 a year and no more, and let there be a paper he signs that says exactly what he did, and let Dr. Amory keep it in the parish chest with the rest, so that if he ever comes back into this county, or writes one line to me asking for money, it can be read out in a courtroom in an afternoon." There was a considerable pause. "Madam," said Sir Hugh Cardell, "you would have made a very fine attorney." "I have had a great deal of practice at being one," said Verity Stroud. It was done that way. Everard added, without consulting anybody, that the £40 a year would be paid out of Elmhurst and not out of Bracken End, since Bracken End would have to be sold to satisfy the mortgages, and there would be nothing left over, and that the sum was to be paid quarterly to a bank in Cork, and would stop dead the day the man set foot in England. Verity Stroud went to the vicarage. Mrs. Amory had her within the hour and would not hear of anything else, and it was the correct arrangement, and Everard, who had wanted very much to arrange something else, said so aloud and let it be. He called on the 11th day. It was the longest 11 days of his adult life, and he spent a good deal of them being unreasonable to his steward. She was in the vicarage garden with a slate and a sheaf of the parish accounts, and she looked up and said, "You have come to see whether I am being pitied to death." "I have come to ask whether I may call on you," Everard said, "and I find I have already done it, which is clumsy, so I shall ask about the next time instead." "Sit down, Your Grace." She moved the slate. "I want to say something first, and then I shall be very glad to see you on Thursdays. What you did that night, the bell, and the lodge, and the vicar, and the 40 pages, I have thought about it every morning since I woke up. Do you know what I keep arriving at? That you did not once ask me whether I was in it with him. You were standing on my step telling me I had not sent for you," said Everard. "A woman in a plot does not open with that. A great many men would not have noticed." She turned her face away. And you never once said the sensible, cruel thing, which is that no respectable young woman walks 2 miles at midnight to a duke's west door however frightened she is of her father. I have said it to myself about 400 times. You did not say it at all. No, Everard said, because I have sat on a bench for 11 years, Miss Stroud, and I know what it costs to be a woman with no money and no brother and a father who signs things. I did not think you a fool for coming. I thought you the bravest person I had met in a decade, and then you sat down on my stairs and told me there were 2 people under the lamp, and worked out the whole shape of it standing in a wet doorway in ruined shoes, and I have been unfit for business ever since. Verity Stroud looked at her hands. That is very nearly a declaration, she said. It is a very long way off one. I am 40 years old and you are lodging in a vicarage on my recommendation, and there is not one thing I can say to you for 6 months that would not be an abuse of it. He stood up. So I shall come on Thursdays and talk to you about the drainage of the Netherby Common and the state of the parish accounts, which I am told you have already improved, and in the spring, if you are still willing to see me, I shall say a great deal more. Would that suit? It would suit, said Verity, extremely well. He came on Thursdays. He came for 22 of them in an open gig in daylight, with the vicar's wife in and out of the room, and the whole village free to count the visits, which it did. By November they were arguing about the poor rate. By January she was correcting his letters to his own attorney, and by February she had discovered that the Duke of Elmhurst, who was feared in 3 counties, could not spell the word necessary and never had been able to. He said the great deal more in April, in the vicarage garden, standing in daylight, with the gardener audibly clipping something 20 yards away. I have had a paper written, he said, and it is not romantic, and I want you to read it before you answer me. It settles 400 a year on you absolutely in your own name, whether you marry me or not, from this April, for your life. It is signed, and it is with my attorney, and it cannot be undone by me or by anybody. He put it into her hands. I will not have you say yes to me in the same year your father tried to sell you. You must first have money that has nothing to do with me, so that you can tell me to go to the devil if you like, and eat your dinner afterwards. Verity Stroud read it through twice. Then she folded it and put it in her pocket and said, Ask me. Marry me. Yes, she said, and then, when he did not move, Everard, I have had 400 a year for 11 seconds, and I have already decided how to spend it, and it is on you, so you may as well. He kissed her hand once in the middle of the vicarage garden, with the gardener 20 yards off, which was in that parish equivalent to an announcement in the newspapers. They were married in June from the vicarage, with the banns read 3 times, and Mrs. Amory cried in the front pew, and Sir Hugh Cardell gave the bride away. The 40 pages went into the parish chest at Elmhurst and stayed there. Twice in the following years, when some woman in that county was in the sort of trouble that has no witnesses, the Duchess of Elmhurst was seen going into a house at an hour when duchesses do not call, with a housekeeper, a vicar's wife, pen and ink, and 3 sheets of paper, and the Duke sitting outside in the gig with the door open, because his wife had explained to him, at some length, and on a great many Thursdays, that a name is a weapon, and that having been on the wrong end of one, she intended to spend hers.